Welcome to another episode of the Doctors Building Wealth podcast. Today, Kenji and I are coming to you from Japan, and so you'll see our setting is a little bit different if you're watching this on video. And we're going to be talking about some of the mini retirements we've been doing these last few years as part of the semi-retired life. And this has been such a cool experience for us. We really wanted to share what we've been doing in hopes that it inspires you to consider going out and maybe doing something similar, or give you some ideas or inspiration for what you're going to do down the road. You know, we have a lot of people in our community who are building your wealth through real estate. You're building up this cash flow. And sometimes it can be hard to kind of do things differently. And you stay in that same rat race and you have all this cash flow coming in, but you're not actually letting it affect your life and letting it change how you're leading your life. You're just kind of piling up the money. And so this is such a cool way, I think, for you to maybe ease into doing something a little bit differently. And yeah, consider trying what we've been doing. So we wanted to share that with you.
Also, I think a lot of people in our community are wanting to continue to work, right? And so they really want to be semi-retired, not fully retired. They would love to have the option and freedom to do things like we're doing here, which we'll talk about, but also continue to work, right? And continue to maintain that career.
Yeah, this is partially why we called it Semi-Retired MD. I don't know if you guys all know this story, but we created that name because we realized if we just retired, sat on a beach, and yeah, we would get more time with our kids and with each other, which is what we were ultimately looking for, but we would also lose some purpose in our lives. So we really wanted to do this semi-retirement or this semi-retired life where we were still feeling that sense of purpose. We were still working or giving back in a way that was meaningful to us, while we also had that freedom to not have to do it, but to choose to do it by choice.
Yeah, and also wanted to share that we've done that, right? We actually did take a year to travel, and about 5 months into it, I really did feel that lack of purpose and that lack of drive. And so it wasn't until maybe later in that year that I realized that, and then found a purpose, and then really started to get excited about different things, right? So it is important to kind of make sure that you guys know that this arrival fallacy is real, right? You know, this whole notion of like, okay, I'm doing all this to get to this place, and at that time, you know, I'm finally going to be able to like relax and be happy, right? And ultimately, that's just not how it works.
That's right. That's right. And so we wanted to present this episode as a model for you of one way that, you know, what we've been doing in hopes that it will help you kind of think through how you want your life to look, whether it's, you know, next year or maybe a couple years down the road. So what have we been doing, right? So some of you may be aware, Kenji and I have been taking at least 1 month a year and actually going to different places and kind of doing slow travel, where we are involved with this program called Boundless Life, where we actually put our kids in school, we get an apartment, and then there's a co-working space with a lot of other entrepreneurs. We've been doing this back since, I think, 2022, 2023, and we've spent time in Greece for a couple years in a row. We've spent time in Spain, and right now we're actually doing a 3-month program here in Japan.
Yeah, and this is really how we love to do it, right? We love to work hard and play hard, and you know, these months that we spend in Boundless, it's not all play, right? But I would say that there's definitely a shift. There's more play than there is work.
Yeah, it's been really special. It's like you have these periods where you're exploring and you're out doing a lot of new things. And yeah, you still have a schedule, you're still meeting with your team, you're still working on projects, you're still moving them forward, but it's just a totally different feel to be somewhere else. And I have to say, it also makes you creative in a different way. And so a lot of you are who are thinking, and you know, you're going to hear about us and how we've done 1-month cohorts and 3-month cohorts. You're thinking, I can't go away for a whole month, like it's going to slow down my productivity. Actually, in some ways, you may become more productive because it just stimulates your mind and stimulates your thinking. And when you get into new situations and you speak to new people, you oftentimes see opportunities that you were maybe missing or just not realizing were there and available for you, and you start to think differently. And it can be some of the most productive time that you actually have. It's just not productive in the way that you see productive right now.
Yeah. You might be thinking like, I can't afford to do it, but I'd actually say you can't afford to not do it, right? And something that you often say is relationships, right, is one of the most important things. One of the most productive things you can do is build those relationships. And if I think about the last number of years that we've been doing this, just thinking about all the amazing relationships that we've built over those years and how amazing it's contributed in so many ways in our life, not just financially, but also personally and fun and enjoyment and, help with our conferences, whatever it is. It's been a real amazing journey, and doing it with other people has been awesome as well. And so if you think about the time, it's going to be time really well spent, especially if you do focus on building those relationships.
Yeah. So what I wanted to start out with was talking a little bit about why we do this. Why have we chosen to take a month or up to 3 months at a time, go someplace else, continue, like we said, to move our businesses forward and to work, but spend a lot of the time doing different things and do it with our family. So let's start out by talking about why we personally enjoy doing this. And I have to tell you guys, one of the books that's been very meaningful to our journey is Patrick Lencioni's book, 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family. And what it talks about is creating a family culture and setting cultural values for your family. And one of the things that it says is, when you set those cultural values, it makes decisions so much easier. It's the same thing that happens when you're creating business. If you set cultural values of how we treat each other, it actually helps make decisions much easier because it's very, very clear what our values are. And so we set values for our family, like what are the most important things that we want from our family. And so part of why we do this for ourselves and for our family is to really meet those cultural values, living life outside of the box, raising kids with grit and independence, right? All these things come from traveling, from living in a totally new place, from having the Boundless curriculum that does actually emphasize a lot of the similar things, and then giving our kids that exposure of being in a different culture, actually integrating into it, not just walking around learning about how the Romans lived, but actually eating breakfast, at the cafes every day and watching some of the behaviors that are going on around them. It's just such a cool experience, that immersive experience.
I'd say for me, it's probably not delaying that gratification, right? You can kind of think about retirement 20 to 30 years from now, right? Or you can kind of say to yourself, well, maybe I'll take these mini retirements. And I think that's kind of how we see it, is that we're taking these little mini retirements. Again, we're not completely doing no work at all. And also, if you think about it, in your retirement, you're probably going to be pretty productive too. And so this is kind of how we think about it, is that these breaks are so important to, just to kind of clear your mind, number one, being in a different environment, seeing different cultures, different ways of thinking, different ways of living, which we'll talk about. Mm-hmm. But that's this experience is so enriching, and it's also just gives your brain a break. And if we think about how you can afford not to do this, I mean, you have to think about the health benefits of something like this, right? And also think about the ideas that come out of being in a different environment. And so I think those are some of the reasons why. I kind of feel like I can't afford not to, and I don't want to delay gratification and wait till 20 to 30 years before I can start enjoying something like this. I mean, we go exercising, running, hiking, right? And just thinking about doing that at 60 or 70 versus being able to do it now. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I have to say, another reason we do this is it's really fun.
Yeah,
it's just really, really fun. Going to explore, going to try something new, going to spend your time with your friends. I mean, summers literally feel like adult day camp is what I call it, because we all walk and drop off our kids, and then the rest of the day we're going, to breakfast for hours, we're working out, and we're creating those deep relationships, but we're also having those conversations that make you think differently and make you maybe make different choices. And that's really fun, to get exposed to so many new ideas and to go on different adventures in different places. And so if you had to say, like, what's this really about? I think it's lovely for our kids to be immersed in culture. I think it's lovely for them to learn flexibility and to adjust to being in different places. I think it's lovely for us to be able to truly experience places by being there for a period of time. But most of all, for me, this was like fun. It's like an adventure. And you don't get all these opportunities to create all these memorable experiences like we're going to have here that you're going to remember when you're 85. It's so cool. Okay, so we wanted to give you an actual example of some of the things that are going on here that kind of highlight a lot of the things we've been talking about, right? So we've been here about 2 weeks now, and we have 2 neighbors who have now gotten upset with us and our neighbors who are also in the Boundless program. One of them is upset. His dog is very sensitive to light, and he doesn't want us to have our lights on in the windows facing his house at night, okay? And he's also upset because our neighbors, our Boundless neighbors, had a gathering with like probably 5 or 6 families. And that gathering, it wasn't loud per se by American standards, right? It wasn't loud, but it did go on after dark, which is a big thing here. And there were kids outside after dark, and then there were adults talking outside after dark. So that was also very upsetting to him. And then our other neighbor is concerned about the lawn and about the lawn getting worn out in spaces with the kids playing outside. So that just gives you an example of how you have those different cultures, right? In the US, this would not be coming up, right? But this is a really important thing to understand in Japan is like, our neighbors like, well, we don't do this in Japan. We don't have big groups over. We don't stay out over at dark. And coming with our culture, it can be very easy, or I will say Kenji has some Japanese culture, so he can talk about this too. But coming from my American culture, it'd be very easy to me to dismiss it and be like, this is crazy. And part of me does do that. But then part of the experience of being here is realizing different people do things differently. People have different norms. People have different views of the same circumstance. And how cool is that for our kids to learn and for us to also remember and to see different perspectives, right? I think one of the challenges is most of us just see our own perspective, and we don't have that broader vision of seeing other perspectives, understanding that they're different. And, we don't necessarily have to agree with them, but we can at least understand that they exist. And so I think this is a really great reminder for us, but also for the kids to see that different places in the world do things differently. And there's an ability for them to be even more aware of others, which I think is sometimes, I've seen be a challenge for especially our middle kid as he grows up, because he's so much about himself, which is a normal part of being a kid and developing, right? But allowing him to be able to witness, okay, well, this is a situation that your neighbor is seeing it very differently. Can you understand his perspective? I think it's an opportunity for growth for us, but also for the kids. And that's the kind of like little minutia, day-to-day minutia that may seem like not very much, but actually is the important pieces that stack up over time from immersive cultural experiences.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that, if you think about America, there's so many diverse cultures, and maybe there's not quite an understanding of other cultures, right? And I think immersing yourself in a culture, you have no choice but to adapt to it, right? And we were talking earlier about some families saying like, oh, we're just gonna, do our thing, right? But at the end of the day, that's gonna cause complications, right? And especially in this little neighborhood, this little pocket where we live in, that's gonna cause some serious problems. And you just have to understand and respect the differences. And also a big part of that respect is being a part of it and playing that role, right? Adapting to that, yeah. And so so it has been a great experience for me, even though this was how I was raised. I'm very familiar with it, but I also really do think of myself as an American and adopting a lot of the American values. But I understand and appreciate the Japanese culture and the differences and really truly how different it is. But I wanted to say one of the things that you do appreciate is that things work really well here, right? As a result, it is so pleasant in so many different ways. People are so friendly and nice, and things work so well, right? And you got to imagine, right? This is a place where people are living so close to each other, right? I mean, these walls here in this house are so paper thin, and you have neighbors right there, right? And so this is culturally like how people were raised, right? Is that you can't just be screaming and yelling and doing your own thing and because you're going to bother your neighbors, right? And so those are the types of things that I think you really do appreciate and start to understand and respect.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking as you're talking also, you guys don't know, but we have expanded our house in Puerto Rico. We have 7 bedrooms now. We have a ton of space. We're here in Japan in a 3-bedroom house. There's 6 of us. We have 1 shower and we have 2 toilets. And I remember thinking when we came here, like, oh gosh, this is going to be an adjustment for everybody. But yeah, everybody's adjusted like very easily. It really hasn't been stressful or painful or anything at all. They just kind of got into it, and none of our kids have even said anything about it. And it's so cool to see how flexible they are. Because I think flexibility is such an important skill set. It's such an important part of your identity if you can take that if you choose to, because this is a choice. Say, I'm a flexible person, but I think taking on flexibility and practicing flexibility is one of the biggest gifts we can give to our kids, because when they're in situations down the road, they're going to be able to look at things differently, or to be able to change a path instead of being stuck in a certain way things have to go. And just an example of that is literally going from this huge house to this space and appreciating it for what it is. It's really cool. We're like literally together in the space all the time together, because there's no other space. It's really kind of fun. You can't be in separate spaces. You can hear each other every single room, and that's it. There's an adventure in that too.
Yeah, it's funny because people oftentimes ask us, like, how do your kids adapt, and like, how do they adapt to all that travel and staying in different places? And what's funny actually is that the kids adapt pretty quickly and well. It's the adults who don't adapt as quickly as well. So if you're wondering this, like, don't worry about the kids. They're very adaptable, and okay, that first few trips, the first places that you stay in, it might be a little bit rough, and there might be a little bit of adapting with sleep schedules and sleeping in a different bed and those types of things. But man, those kids adapt really quickly. Again, like I said, I think it's the adults who tend to have more trouble. So don't worry about the kids; they're going to be fine.
So let's talk a little bit about logistics and how we kind of organize this. We mentioned that we do this through Boundless Life, and the reason that we really like to have it organized for us is, number one, community. We've done a ton of traveling ourselves, and what we've found is, we could go visit relatives, maybe we meet up with a friend somewhere, but you don't have that ability to form deep relationships with community and be together for months at a time. And so even if you think about, hey, I'm going to go be in Italy for a month at a time, you're probably not going to have community to the level that you can have through an organized group where everybody's in a new place, everybody is exploring that new place. Everybody's excited to try new things. Last night I went to the girls' night out. Kenji's been to the men's night out, and they're doing male meetings and stuff. And then there's groups going out and exploring different niche areas that they're excited about. And so you have that ability to explore all these different passions, pottery making, cultural, and to do so with people who you have some familiarity with, and you build those relationships over time. So I think community is one of the really big keys of when you're thinking to yourself, hey, I'm going to go somewhere for a month or two, make sure that you're thinking about how you build community in, so you don't feel alone, and you can form those relationships that lead to potentially something beautiful beyond just that experience.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of distinguish, think back to the times when it was like just us, right?
Yeah,
so
and our kids, right?
Right. So think about just us versus us and the kids. I mean, it's two totally different experiences. And for those of you guys who are listening who have mostly your travel experiences with a spouse, right?
Right.
Like, okay, the two of you can have a lot of fun. You can kind of explore. Like there's like probably no second of the day where you're not doing something or excited about something. But with kids, and maybe this is more my mindset, but with kids, it's totally different, right? Because you're now accommodating, their schedule, their naps, or, you have, outbursts or a lot of emotions, ups and downs. They're tired, and they're jet lagged.
And you're thinking about their education, and
right.
You're also thinking about them having fun in their experiences, which may be different experiences than you want to do.
Yeah, so again, this is the difference, right? Is that, many of you guys are thinking, oh, I want to travel, but wait until you start to travel with kids and all those other responsibilities that I just kind of talked about that you have to manage, right? And being part of a program like this makes it so much easier. Just the other day, one of our kids was sick, and our nanny had to step out for a second, and we just asked our neighbor, hey, would you mind kind of keeping an eye on our 10-year-old, right? And so it's things like that are so much easier when you have community. You have instant kind of, hey, let's go out and do this, right? I mean, and of course we do things on our own as well, right? And we do things with our kids. But it's not just that, right? It's that plus all the support, plus doing things with other people.
Yeah. So, speaking about the kids, because we were originally talking initially about, community and how important it is for us adults, but community for kids, it's so much more beyond just the school or having something like that. It's actually the day-to-day, how much easier it makes it, because you're almost raising your kids as a group. I think back to Greece, and some of the ways that we would spend our weekends in Greece is we would go to a beach club, and all the kids, 10 families would go to the beach club. We'd all have beach chairs, and the kids would be playing together in the water, playing together on the beach. And the adults would actually have time to sit and talk. And it wasn't like you were running around after a kid trying to build sandcastles with them or all those things that you oftentimes do if it's just you and your kids, right? And so it just allows a little bit more breathing space for the adults. So it's actually a vacation for the adults too, which is a very different experience, I think, than when you're traveling with small children. Our kids right now are 10, 8, and 4. So we now have a little bit more breathing space than we did a couple years ago, but traveling with your kids, for months at a time, which is sometimes what we did, you never have any breathing space. You're constantly taking care of somebody until they go to sleep. This gives you that space day to day, and it really adds up, and it gives you just a different feeling of not carrying that responsibility all on your own shoulders, which you really do have when you travel. So then let's talk a little bit about housing, like how we would think about housing. So we're lucky enough that, this program has housing that you can do with it. But, we've spent a lot of time in Airbnbs. So I just wanted to also say, that's oftentimes what we do when we travel with kids. We always get Airbnbs because we want to be able to cook. Our family is a family that eats a lot of vegetables, and we can only eat out so many times meals before we get tired of those meals. And we want a home cooked meal, and we want a lot more vegetables. And so we pretty much always, it's very, very rare that our family stays in a hotel because we want to have that ability to have a kitchen, to be able to have breakfast together at a table with, and have a simple breakfast rather than having to go to some hotel buffet. So logistically, I would say we've always found that Airbnbs or having a home when we travel with kids has been the best setup for us. Also having separate rooms, right? So everybody could actually sleep is a big deal.
Yeah, and then being part of a program like this, not having to worry at all about it, right? And not having to worry about which neighborhood and those types of things. And I think the other thing is they cluster families together. So that's also a nice thing. We're just talking about getting help. Actually this morning, our neighbor was like, "Do you have an egg?" Right? And we're like, "Yeah, we have an extra egg, no problem." And so it's those types of things that it really is it just integrates you into the community. And actually now we know we have Japanese neighbors. We're sharing some of the stories about them, but we're friendly with at least one of them.
Yeah, we were playing baseball the other day, and he was standing there chatting with the adults while the kids and some of us were doing that, and it was really a cool experience. So yeah, we highly encourage you, if you're thinking about doing this kind of thing, to make sure that you're having community, both for yourself and for the kids, not just, for the kids, but you too. It's really important that you have the space to be able to reenact that family lifestyle where you're eating breakfast together, where, there's the ability to have that flexibility of food and the space to have people in different rooms, which doesn't come with a hotel for sure. I wanted to spend a moment also to talk about logistics, about what we do with our home, because I had somebody asking me that the other day, is how do you actually do this? So let's talk through that process of what we kind of do to prepare to go on something like this logistically. So first of all, we obviously choose when we're going to go, and we're really thoughtful about the seasons and what the weather's going to be like in those places. We pack, Kenji and I, every single time, except this time, we've been doing photo shoots at these places. So we end up bringing 2 suitcases each because we're packing all these photo shoot and different outfits. And so this is a little bit challenging. Even thinking about being here, right? We're here April through June. So we have, spring weather, we have summer weather. We're planning for that. We also stop for Hawaii on the way here. I'm going to Miami in a couple weeks for an F1 race. So there's those outfits too. So we do actually plan. You really have to think ahead and pack for all the situations. But I think what people forget is, listen, you're going to a country you can ultimately buy something. It's not the end of the world if you forget something. You can always buy it. You don't have to bring big bottles of shampoo. You can buy that. This morning I was trying this new face wash from here in Japan. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I wonder if I could buy a pack of this and bring it home. So you might discover new things, new products that you didn't have an opportunity to get before because you run out of some of your things that you bring. So anyway, thinking through seasons, thinking through what kind of outfits you're going to need, and then just packing those bags, ideally, start a week or two ahead of time. And yeah, it's not as hard as you would think.
Yeah, for sure. And, for us, it's a little bit more complicated because we have equipment to bring with us, right? But
Oh yeah. I'm diminishing it because I'm not saying, Kenji brought all this recording equipment. Absolutely.
Right,
So he's
right.
got that extra thing to remember.
So it's like it was like those photo shoots, right? All the clothes for the photo shoots, plus then all the equipment for video and podcasting and things like that.
And then there are a few things we bring, like I brought some chili seasoning this time, and we like to oftentimes when we travel to Airbnbs, we bring knives, like sharp knives, because a lot of Airbnbs don't have great knives. So there are some like family things that we'll pack that will be a little bit different if we're going someplace for months at a time. But it's not as challenging as you think. I think people have so many concerns that they kind of work up. And just remember, you can always order. Even here in Japan, there's Amazon. You can order.
I was going to say, one of the things I know we forgot was, certainly the knife, but I can get a sharpening stone, right? So I can just order that. I mean, there are probably better sharpening stones here than anywhere else, right? A lot of them probably come from here. So those are the types of things. Yeah, these problems can be solved.
Everything's figure-outable, right?
That's right.
Everything. And, even here, we're going to go get dental appointments today. So it's really fun to, again, explore how a different culture does these things and go and experience it. Another thing that somebody was asking me about in the last couple of weeks was about what we're doing with our house in Puerto Rico. And so what we have normally done when we go away for a period of time is we want somebody to check in on our house because we're concerned about air conditioning leaking. So you can have always pipes leaking. You can have all kinds of things. Puerto Rico also has hurricanes. So you really want to have somebody who's willing to look after your property to some level.
Our air conditioning is on all the time, right? Just to kind of keep the humidity out. So those are the types of things. I mean, there are things that machinery and generators and things that are kind of like going on and off.
Some of you probably have basements and some pumps and things like that. So there is something to think about with your home and maybe not closing it up for 3 months and not having anyone check on it. Now, some of you have neighbors who you're probably friends with. You can have your neighbors going in. We have one neighbor of ours who's going to feed some stray cats that we have that we normally feed these stray cats. And now they don't have any. So our neighbor is coming to feed the stray cats and also to harvest a lot of our herbs outside so that they don't go to seed. And then we set up this time a cleaning company to go in every week actually and just do a small clean. And over the time that we're gone, they're going to do a deep clean of the house, all the shelves, all the windows, all those things. So it's kind of cool. We're getting our deep cleaning spaced out over the period of 3 months. And then we also this time hired a handyman, which makes me also feel really good that there's somebody outside, or if the cleaners identify, there's a leaking something, that he can get involved very, very quickly. So this is how we set it up this time. But we've always had somebody checking in on the house, like every week or two. 2 weeks is even a little bit long, to make sure things are operating well and there aren't any major disasters that are happening that aren't going to be missed, and we'll come back 3 months later and have something on our hands.
Yeah, I did want to mention that, this it has become easier over time too,
Yes.
right? And so we've learned from past travel. The other thing I think helps before a 3-month trip is to do these smaller trips. So we've done 1-month trips. Before that, we would do 2-week trips, 1-week trips, right? So it gets easier when first of all, you do this over and over again, and then you do longer and longer periods of time. And so over time, as we are planning, like we're always thinking about, okay, how do we have somebody take care of the plants? How do we take care of the lawn? Take care of the house, take care of the air conditioning, all these things we're thinking about all the time. And so we come up with solutions as time goes on. And again, like I said, this is the type of thing where initially it may feel overwhelming, but once you start doing it, it gets much easier.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention, I remember maybe like 5-6 years ago at this point, we took a long trip from Seattle for like a month or two, and we actually had Bonnie Koo and her family stay in our house, remember, for like a number of weeks. So you can also rent out your house or let your friend like live in your house. Maybe you have a friend who maybe we have friends who want a vacation in Puerto Rico and they could just come live in our house for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Like that's also another way to do it. We didn't have anyone who wanted to do that this time around. I did actually offer it to a couple people, but that's another way to do it. I wanted to talk about logistics of school too. A lot of you guys have your kids in school. So one option is just to do it in the summer. And that's what we did those first couple years, is we would do, 1 month summer programs or 1 or 2 months away. Usually we would travel before and after. So it would often be we were gone for a couple months. But this year, what we did, one of our son really wanted to go to a private school this year. And so we put him in school, but we told them, hey, we're enrolling him with school for 3 months. We will pay this new student fee, which was ridiculous to pay for 3 months. And we paid them. And we told them ahead of time where we had that leverage that they wanted the money. And they were like, okay. And so they let us pull them out after 3 months. Now, they've said next year, you can't pull them out in the middle again. So they kind of laid down the law for next year. But I bring that up because you may not think that you have flexibility, but you may have flexibility, you just haven't asked. And so one thing that we have always learned is, if you don't ask, then, you're not even getting the opportunity to make it happen. And so we just ask for what we want. And that's really allowed us a lot of flexibility in our life, both when we were working as doctors, just asking for what we want. That gave us freedoms that nobody else had because nobody else asked for it. And I would say the same thing if you're sitting there saying, well, my kid's in school, like I can't take them out during the school year. You know what? If you ask for it and you set up a situation where they're doing the homework or whatever, you may find you have a lot more flexibility than you think, but you just haven't asked. You've assumed that there's no other option. And so I would encourage you to go say, if this is really what you want, let's say you want to go away for 3 months or 6 months, go ask and figure out a plan, and there will be a way. You just have to go find it.
Yeah, and then maybe, the other thing is that as you're kind of developing a plan, maybe start out with that 1 month, right, in the summer or in the winter, right? And take advantage of that time. Again, everybody's school schedules might be a little bit different, but if you can kind of carve out, a good, let's say 4 weeks, that'd be a great starting point. And that way you don't have to pull your kid out of school. You may have them kind of, maybe take some time, a little bit of days off, right? But maybe you can work that out with the school. But especially with younger kids, I think there's more flexibility too.
For sure.
That's the other thing is that start early, right? Don't delay gratification, don't wait, and really get out there.
Yeah, and you're training your school too.
Yeah, that's true.
You're training
too.
them to be flexible. You're training them to look for ways to figure it out. And you're doing the same thing with your work. So lastly, I wanted to mention your work. I know a lot of you work full time. You work in a place where you have to go to clinic. Like, how could you make this work? And how can you make this possible? We have seen people who are full-time docs be able to sit down and plan it out actually a couple years in advance with their work so that they have a period that the work knows they're going to be away, that they get permission years in ahead. So it's all planned out. I think about one of our friends, and she went to Spain last year with us, and that's what she did. She started ahead of time telling them what she wanted and looking for ways to make it happen. And it took a little bit of time, but they finally were like, yes, we could do this. Another thing we've seen people do is, let's say they do 1 month away and one parent comes for 3 weeks and one parent comes for 2 weeks, and they have some overlap, of course, but then nobody's having to take a whole month off and they're kind of flexing it out. We've seen that also work for different people who are full-time, is that they partway through, the month they'll fly back, do a week, come back. We also have seen people, straight up take sabbaticals for a year and say, hey, I'm quitting my job, or my job is going to let me take a year and come back, and I'm going to just go travel for a year with my kids, and I'm going to come back later on. And we've seen people do that too.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of mention something, maybe a little bit of a different way to think about this is that you'll have more flexibility the more valuable you are to your employer, right? And so if I think about some of these examples, these were people who were in maybe critical positions, maybe a specialty that there weren't a lot of specialists around, right? And so they basically said, hey, this is what I'm going to do, right? And let's figure it out. And so one way to think about this is you can ask yourself, how can I make myself indispensable, right? How can I make myself more valuable to the organization? And that way you can kind of create more degrees of freedom for yourself. So just to maybe a little different way of thinking about it, but this is something that you can start planning today and implementing, and over time, kind of create that position for yourself where ultimately the organization's like, well, we can't afford to lose you, so we'll make it work.
Yeah, and even more so, you can even say, how can I make this a win for the organization, right? Maybe there's something that could be good that comes out of it for the organization. Maybe you take on an additional responsibility beforehand or afterwards or something. Look for a way to, like Kenji says, you're adding value, right? And look for a way that you can also make this a win-win for both of you. And yeah,
I remember one of our friends, he brought in like an associate medical director, right? That could be another way, right? So during that time that he was gone, he was able to kind of bring this person in and train them to take his position or take care of the responsibilities that he had during that time off. So again, just there are many ways you can do this, but it's figure outable is the bottom line.
Yeah, we want you to walk away from this saying, stop saying to yourself, it can't be done, or I can't do it because of this, and start to say, how can I make this happen? And when you go in it with this question and this mindset, you will find a way. It may not be, hey, I'm taking off 6 months and I'm going to travel the world. It may be, hey, I'm starting with a 1 month cohort and I'm going to look to try to get a 3 months off in 2 years. It may be like that. It may come step by step by step. But the idea is stop telling yourself it's impossible and start looking for ways to make it possible and ask yourself, how can I do this? And you will find solutions. We have seen many doctors be able to at least do the 1 month cohort who are working full time. So we know it's possible. And so you just need to find a way. And if it's really important to you, we trust you will, because you're resourceful and you're valuable to the organization that you work for. And so they're going to want to work with you. They're going to want to keep you happy. They're going to want to keep you with them long term. And so just remember that too. Lastly, I wanted to talk about our day-to-day and how we're managing it. Now, we're not full-time doctors, right? We're now at this point, we run the online businesses. Kenji was running our real estate portfolio in many different states remotely, right? And so how are we managing this? What are we doing day-to-day? What are some of the systems and things that we've set up to allow us to be able to do this? So number one, it's always people, right? It's team members who help us. So even here, we have our full-time nanny who helps us in the mornings, because we're oftentimes in meetings in the very morning when our kids need to get ready and go to school. And so she's getting our kids ready. She's taking them to school while we are doing meetings. And so we needed some childcare during that period of time. People here who are both working full time, it's a little bit more challenging for them if they're doing all meetings in the mornings. They're finding a way. I was talking to a lady last night and she was like, yeah, we're having our older kid kind of walk our younger kid to school. And we're also asking the neighbors, other Boundless families to come pick up our kids and take them. So again, if you have a community, there's always a way. And, for us, we brought a nanny, but nobody else does. So you will figure it out, even if you're working full time, even if you're in meetings. There are people in this community who are working full time in the US. There's one person working from 1 a.m. to like 9 a.m. every day, and they're just making it happen. That's what they're doing. They're going to the co-working space and they're doing it. There's another one I was talking to last night working from 4 a.m. every day, and she's a full-time, W-2 worker, and that's what she's doing. We have a little bit of additional flexibility. We have our team, which is mostly actually East Coast-based team. They're staying up a little bit later for us, and we're doing our meetings, from basically 6 or 7 in the morning until 11 a.m. And then it's cool. We have the rest of the day to work on individual projects or to go on our adventures. But our team is also flexing. And so that's been really helpful with semi-retired MD. Do you want to talk about the real estate portfolio?
Well, the real estate portfolio is actually a lot easier. I do have a portfolio manager, and that helps a lot for sure, especially for the Airbnb. So I should actually step back and say that the Airbnb is the one thing that you are going to have to think about. For those of you guys listening who have short-term rentals, you're thinking about getting a short-term rental, and you're going to be self-managing. One thing to kind of keep in mind is that 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., right? That's the check-in window that most people check in during those times. And that's usually where you're going to get some messages. And so I remember being in Europe was very challenging, because it was always that, it was about 10 p.m. to midnight. And there was always this decision of me like, okay, am I going to stay up? Can I monitor this? Or what am I going to do, right? And then sometimes between 12 a.m. and 2 a.m., I might have to stay up a little bit longer, just depending on the situation when people are checking in. So that's something that you're going to have to kind of manage and think about, but there are solutions to that as well, right?
Right. So you can get a co-host for a period of time, right? If you know
Absolutely.
You're going to be traveling for 3 or 6 months, you could get a co-host to help you with.
You can get a virtual assistant.
Yep. A lot of virtual assistants are in Philippines or Latin America, and they'll cover those periods of time. And you definitely had a virtual assistant helping you for periods of time when you were going to be sleeping.
Yep.
Kenji has a portfolio manager who's a US-based person who's helping him and loves to run the Airbnb, which is very cool. You can also get a property manager and do it for a period of time, but the only problem with that is the listing will change, and then you would lose if you were superhost. So maybe that's a little bit less attractive than finding your own team member to cover some hours.
But bottom line is, I think it's very figure outable, especially if it's for shorter periods of time. And by shorter, I'm talking about 1, 2, 3 months, right? I'm not talking about like a week. Ultimately, yeah, you're gonna want to think through that one for sure. But the long-term rentals are pretty manageable, and there are very few things. almost all of them have property managers. I may have one or two that I'm self-managing, but even those, they're not usually going to be any kind of like emergencies, and so we can handle the long-term rentals pretty easily. So the real estate portfolio overall, yeah, pretty manageable.
Yeah, so basically we get up in the mornings, we do our meetings that we need to do, and we do our Q&As basically from 9 to 11, and then we have that freedom to go out and explore and of course, anytime we want to say, hey, let's not do meetings, like we're going to be going to Micronesia, Pacific Islands in a couple weeks. We're not going to have any meetings during that time. So for us, for an online business and for a real estate portfolio, it's pretty easy. Definitely Europe was a little more challenging. We were sometimes waking up at 2 a.m. in Europe to do meetings, but you say, I'm going to find a way to make it work. It doesn't always need to be optimal. It doesn't always need to be perfect. Sometimes it's just plain messy, but you find a way to make it work if it's important to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, like one of the, I'm not sure if you guys can relate to this, but you have a certain feeling like post-call, and you get out at, sometimes it could be 10 a.m. or noon, and then you kind of have that afternoon, you're kind of like, feel a little bit dazed, right? But it's kind of cool too, because you're like, okay, I did my call night, and you have this like time now. And so, when we did those 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. calls, I would have that similar feeling of like a little bit tired, a little bit feeling dazed, but also this feeling of like, oh, kind of a cool feeling too. So yeah. I don't know, there's always you can kind of look at it as a real downside, or you can kind of just go with it, right? And kind of just go with the flow. And I think that's what, we learned to do when we were traveling in Europe, and it'd be like this, like on a weekly basis, we'd have like 2 to 4 a.m. calls.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want you to hear that people are doing this full-time work other places and still making it happen, right? So if you're saying to yourself, I can't do it because of this meeting or this thing I have to do, again, really question if that's the truth or if there's a way to flex and a way to figure it out. So the things that I really wanted all of you to hear from this is ask if you can find a way, and assume you're going to find a way, and go figure it out. And don't just assume you can't do it, okay? To take a significant amount of time with your family and go travel. Make sure you do it kind of earlier than you think you can, because you don't want to be in a situation you put it off and you put it off and you put it off and say someday, and then you never do it. Because these kind of memories are the memories that, core memories that stay with your kids, but also with you. And it's really a special experience to be with your family, slow traveling for months at a time. Like, that's just one of the most amazing things I think you can do in the world for yourself and your family. And then number 2, I wanted you to hear the importance of community. How you really, if you're going to do something like this for, more than a week or 2 of vacation, you want community, and how special that is for your kids, but also for you in the spaciousness and the way that it truly can be some time off and some breathing room for you, and not just an experience where you go on vacation and you're going from one activity to another kind of with your kids. It gives you some ability to kind of lean back and relax and really enjoy and be present in the moment. And so I think it's a really special thing for you. And then lastly, I wanted you to hear the logistics of all of it and how we figured it out. And those may not be the right logistical answers for you, but to understand that yes, there will be barriers, and yes, you will work through them. And yes, it may be that what you tried this time doesn't work, and you figure it out next time you make it better, right? And so all of this is possible for you to do too, not just for us. And I hope we've given you enough examples of people who we've seen doing it, working full time. And again, just finding a way to make it happen, even if it's they're doing meetings at 1 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I wanted to add to that was a question that I asked you many years ago, which is like, well, what is the life that you really want if there were no limitations, right? And for those of you guys who are like, been thinking all this time, like, oh, I wish I could do more travel, go do it, right? And go design that, right? Decide what it is you want to do, and then make it happen, right? And just kind of forget about the limitations for now, right? Again, you're going to have to figure those things out, but as we've been saying throughout this episode, it's all figure outable, right? But you got to start out with like what it is you really want, and then just go for it.
Yep. So that's a really great summary. Lastly, if you want to do Boundless, this is something we discovered that we've really enjoyed. It's called Boundless Life, and you can just find it online. If you end up doing a program, you can use us as your referrals. We get an amount off of our next trip, and you would get an amount off of yours as well. So it's kind of a win-win. But there are many different programs like this. Boundless may not be the right fit for your family. And so again, I encourage you to go see what kind of programs there are, how they fit you, but also I want to add, you could do this yourself, right? You could rent an Airbnb. You could get a group of your friends to come along with you, rent side-by-side Airbnbs, and absolutely organize this yourself too. Just a little bit more work. So there's lots of different ways to do this. Again, don't let that be the thing that holds you back. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Doctors Building Wealth podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with a friend, and maybe you can recruit them to go on the next adventure with you too. And we'll see you in the next episode.